This Captain James Jack, he was Charlotte's Paul Revere. He was the guy who rode all the way to the Continental Congress. He gave the delegates the Declaration of Independence and encouraged them to share it with their colleagues and in hopes that that's what the Continental Congress would do. The Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence was, as far as we know in the history of America, the first time that any county, let alone a colony, declared its independence from Great Britain. In fact, in 1775, not 5 blocks from here is where it all happened. Colonel Thomas Polk, who was the commander of the militia at the time, called for 2 members of each of the militia units to come together at the courthouse right in the center of Charlotte. And along with 2 or 3 other leading citizens, they gathered on May the 19th and met the whole evening to determine what they were going to do about this Lexington affair, where the British shot their own people there on the Lexington Green and later in Concord. And it didn't take them long. Within an hour, they determined that they would declare their independence from the Crown. And they worked the rest of the night working out all of the details, writing the Declaration. And then at noon on May 20th, Colonel Polk read the Declaration. Oh, it was a great cause for great celebration. There were huzzahs all over the place, hats up in the air, and the people of Mecklenburg were very proud of what they'd done. About 2 or 3 days later, they selected Captain James Jack. He was a local tavern owner and a captain of his militia unit, to take copies of the Declaration and ride 550 miles all the way up to the Continental Congress, which was meeting in Philadelphia, and to give it to the North Carolina delegates, which he did at great peril to his own life. If he'd have been caught, of course, he'd have been labeled a rebel and seditious to the Crown and would have likely been hanged on the spot. This Captain Jack, he was quite the patriot. He was 43 years old when he volunteered to take the documents up to Philadelphia. And that was an 1,100-mile trip. Think about it. That gives a whole new meaning to the word saddle sore. It took him a little over a month to do that. He had 4 children, and his wife he left behind. And he knew that it was a huge duty for him to perform. Mech Deck, as we call it, included a resolve to dissolve all ties to Great Britain and the Crown. They also resolved to govern themselves. And about 14 days later, they met again and developed a list of real detailed resolves on how they were actually going to govern themselves. I must say that there's been some controversy over the Mecklenburg Declaration all these many years, because unfortunately the only copy was actually held by John McNick Alexander, was lost when his house burnt down. His son then wrote from his memory, as best he could, the Declaration that we have today. The resolves we still have. Those are the documents written several days after the Declaration of Independence on how they were going to govern themselves. So there's this controversy. If you don't have the actual document, how do you know what happened? Well, of course, there are all sorts of historic documents, including letters from the Governor Martin of North Carolina to King George, saying what a spurious document that these people wrote. And there are lots of references. We know for a fact that Captain Jack did ride up to Continental Congress with documents, and there are references in the Salisbury newspaper and other documents that we know that he did that. They came back in about 2 days and said roughly, well, this is far too bold a statement, it's far too early, we're continuing to negotiate with King George, whereupon he said, and I'm paraphrasing, you may continue to negotiate with and memorialize your king, but as for me and my fellow Mecklenburgers, we are finished with the Crown forever. Last May 20th, we dedicated this Spirit of Mecklenburg, the Captain Jack statue. This next May 20th, we intend to dedicate the Charlotte Liberty Walk, which is much like Boston's Freedom Trail, which will feature 18 key Revolutionary War sites in downtown Charlotte. What we would like for folks to know about Charlotte in terms of its history is that we're basically the cradle of liberty. When you take a look at how many battles were fought in the Carolina backcountry, there were probably more fought within 100 miles of Charlotte than any place in all of the colonies. So we're very proud of that heritage. We want to keep the spirit of liberty alive, and we want to continue to remember those who helped establish this wonderful republic.